Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right, good morning, Badlandia. Welcome to Badlands Daily.
It really feels like the cat with the laser pointer. It's like you've led the cat up to the top of the building, and now you're leading it over the edge.
President Trump is rebalancing trade around the world and making things more fair for the American people.
I think that anytime the deep state can like overcapitalize in whatever situation they have, they're going to.
But the rest of it is a very well organized and well funded color revolution operation of the type they run all over the world again and again and again to destabilize entire society.
All right, good morning, Badlandia. Welcome to Badlands Daily. Today is Wednesday, and out of his normal slot, filling in for Ashe, we've got Ghost of Base Patrick Henry. Gordon, how you doing, brother?
I'm great, man. I'm great. How are you?
I am cautiously, pessimistically optimistic about today. As you guys know, Ashe is not on today because she is going to be in court viewing Tina Peters' appeals hearing today. And this is the appeal oral arguments at the state level. So this is the one that, definitively can impact whether or not she's going to have her convictions overturned or not. So that is where Ashe is today. I'm hopeful that they'll make some good arguments. I'm going to be live streaming that today at 2:30. So I think it'll be right after. No, it'll be you start breaking history at noon and you go about an hour and a half. So it'll be
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So 2:30, that'll be on my personal channel, rumble.com/CannCon. I'll put a link in the chat here shortly. But yeah, I'm excited, man. I'm curious to see how this is going to go. Praying for Tina Peters.
Yeah. I hope they do the right thing. But unfortunately, the government there's just too many bad people still in the government, I think. And I think people just need to cope with that reality and stop thinking that because Donald Trump won a fake election that suddenly everybody in the government's a white hat. But praying that Tina doesn't have to spend any more time in prison.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. Jared Polis coming out last week and saying that her sentence is harsh and that he's considering commuting her could weigh a little bit on the appellate courts today. I just put the link in the chat. I'll go ahead and pin that there if you guys want to tune in at 2:30 p.m. I'll try and get Ashe to jump on after to give her take on, whatever she saw while she was in the courtroom and all that good stuff. But yeah. Big day. All right, so let's jump into one of our sponsors here before we get rolling. And I know Gordon looks like he's getting a little bit of a 5 o'clock shadow there. He might be jealous of all of us using the beard oil.
Yeah, I'm growing it out. I think Ashe has been encouraging me to do it for a long time. So I don't know. For now, it's growing. So we'll see. I ordered some beard oil, and I'll give my feedback after I use it.
I was going to say, you're going to have to get you some of that beard oil. Get you some of that beard oil.
Now that I'm alone at the close-up, do you see how awesome my beard looks right now?
I use the beard oil every single day. First thing.
Comes out feeling all silky smooth.
I take the dropper and I manually apply the oil directly to my mustache.
Nice and, oh man, I love it.
And then I do drops all throughout the hair, and then I just rub it all in. And then I top it off with the tallow stick on the face.
Dude, I feel like I have to grow a beard just to try this beard oil. It sounds
Do it, Jay.
Amazing.
It's all from softdisclosure.com, and the best part about it is you'll be supporting Badlands Media Annie from Willow and Farms, and basically 3 of Annie's neighbors. So that's 5 total American companies that you'd be supporting with one purchase.
I have been using the Soft Disclosure scentless beard oil every day after the shower. It looks unkempt, but it feels silky smooth. I want to look a little wild and unapproachable, but for the woman I trust, she'll be like, oh, it's actually kind of soft. He is approachable after all. Otherwise, stay away. And Soft Disclosure will help you too with that, if that's the very specific vibe you're going for.
That is very specific, yes.
You guys are supporting American businesses when you do that. It's absolutely incredible, and you get a great product. Soft Disclosure. All right, softdisclosure.com, promo code Badland, all their products, fantastic products. Tremendous way to support Badlanders and get yourself some great products and support a handful of America First businesses. Every product there up the supply chain helps American businesses. So, all right. Yeah, hell yeah. Gotta get back to that, man. Like I was watching, what was I watching last night that they were talking about? Like they played like an ad, or they read an ad from, like the 60s. And it's like, buy American made toys, because American made toys, you're helping support the like they were proud of that. And now it's like, what can I buy that's the cheapest? Let me just go on Amazon and see what I can find. And it's all coming from China and India and Japan and all these other countries. And yeah, man, gotta support the America First stuff, or American made stuff, which makes it America First. All right, smash that thumbs up if you have not done so yet, and let's get into the news. First story, this we briefly mentioned this, I think, yesterday. We had Bobby Weir pass away, the former one of the founding members of the Grateful Dead, and then of course, tragically, Scott Adams succumbed to cancer.
I didn't know Bob Weir died.
Yeah, Bob Weir died over the weekend, and then today we can not break the story. We can talk about the death of Mark Brnovich, the former attorney general during the 2020 election in Arizona. And he passed away suddenly. Don't know what he died from. He had a post up just a couple days ago, commemorating another friend, I think, that had passed away. Just died suddenly. Don't know what might have caused it. We'll get more details, I'm sure. Not a big fan of Mark Brnovich. He did some things in the 2020 election fight that were admirable, but broadly, he was not an ally of the integrity movement that we saw on the surface. There's a lot of people who think he did some things behind the scenes, maybe, perhaps, but either way, former National Guard veteran, father, husband, son, all that stuff, and 59 years old, passed away. So time is short, folks.
Yeah, well, rest in peace to all.
The only thing that's undefeated in life is death. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into this story here from Just the News. And normally this time of year, Gordon, we're dooming and glooming. Everybody's dooming and glooming. We're going to shut down the government. It looks like Congress is doing something freaking responsible here, and my mind is kind of blown. I was reading this story this morning when I pulled it up, and I was like, holy crap. Here it goes. We are, January 14th. We are 17 days, away from passing the continuing resolutions, and we haven't yet swung into that full doom and gloom panic mode, but we should start seeing it pop up soon. There's a reason we haven't seen it. They're actually doing their jobs. This is kind of shocking. Speaker Johnson expects all government funding bills to pass on time as 2 more head to the floor. And immediately on that title, I'm like, wait, all government funding bills? 2 more head to the floor? What's going on here? It says less than a month to pass the remaining appropriation bills funding fiscal year 2026, House Republicans are convinced it's possible. Speaker Mike Johnson said that he believes lawmakers can pass the remaining 9 of 12 funding bills by January 30th deadline, negating the need for a continuing resolution to prevent a government shutdown. What the bleep? What is going on here? To prevent a continuing resolution? This would be the first non-continuing resolution passed for a funding bill since, I think, 1997. Think about that. 1997.
Seriously?
I believe
Wow.
so.
30 years.
We've been on a continuing resolution for almost 30 years. This is huge. Quote, we cannot govern by continuing resolutions or omnibus. And when we do that, it also loses Congress's opportunity and credibility. It's taken a while, but we are finally moving that boulder uphill. Lawmakers on the House Budget Committee sent 2 more appropriation bills in the form of a minibus to the floor for a vote this week. The minibus provides a total of $76 billion for the Department of State and Treasury, the IRS, the executive and judiciary branches, national security agencies, and others. Now, again, that's 2 bills. It sounds like 2 bills. And you have all those things lumped up into the 2 bills. So are we at the single item appropriations yet? No. But we're moving in that direction, and that's big. That's big. I'm got to be positive when it's positive. Now, this paragraph right here concerns me a little bit. McGovern and Jim McGovern, ranking member from Massachusetts, and other Democrats specifically praised the $30 billion increase in election security grants and $5.5 billion allocated for international humanitarian assistance programs. Those 2 things scare the shit out of me. One, I've been dealing with elections long enough to know that election security grants don't typically go to entities that are dealing with election security the way that we would like election security to be dealt with. It's a lot of these organizations, probably like Democracy Docket, those types of organizations that go out there, the Elias aligned groups that go out there and say, well, yeah, we're here for election security. And in reality, they're doing the exact opposite of that. They're doing things that are counterintuitive to what we would consider a quote unquote security. And then the $5.5 billion for international humanitarian aid just sounds like a new way to describe USAID, National Endowment, all those color revolution instruments for the intelligence community to overthrow regimes. But maybe not. Maybe not. The fact Democrats are supporting it and praising it, that's the concerning part.
Yeah. It's you always have to be a little wary when you see the television characters all agree on something when they're, typically their script is they're supposed to be controlled opposition, right? So, but to your point, it ostensibly is positive, but it certainly doesn't. Even if they get this thing passed, it doesn't mean that our Congress is suddenly legitimate or trustworthy. We just need to be grateful that we are thankful that we have that we didn't get another continuing resolution. But again, the idea is not to compromise and live with 30 whatever it is $7 trillion in debt forever. The idea is to rehaul the system and get rid of the fiat dollar.
I agree with that. By the way, speaking of getting rid of the fiat dollar, silver broke 90 overnight. Silver broke 90. I think it's sitting at like 91 and change right now. That's insane,
man.
That is. I was looking at the chart of it, and holy crap, it's a spike. Like, it looks like Bitcoin when you zoom out and look at all of Bitcoin and just watch the last 5 years of Bitcoin. Yeah, that's what silver looks like right now. And I mean, I'm up. Like I said, I encourage people at $21, $22, $23 around that area to start buying silver. And I mean, it's up fourfold right now. So I hope you guys listened, and I hope you guys jumped on. But let's get back to this here. Republicans champion the taxpayer savings in the minibus. And I hate the fact that they're calling this a minibus. It's like a rebranding of omnibus. It's like, it's not big. It's not omni, meaning one packaged in. It's a minibus this time. No, let's just call it single item appropriations. Let's get to that point. We can call them SAPs or SIPs, single item appropriations. We're taking the A out of appropriations. We're going with the P because SIA doesn't sound very good. Which cuts $9.3 billion from last year's funding levels, a 16% spending reduction. Wow. A spending reduction. You don't typically see that with our government, spending reductions. Only 3 fiscal year 2026 appropriation bills, together funding Veterans Affairs, military construction, the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, and the legislative branch have already become law. 3 more funding bills passed the House last week in the form of a 3-bill minibus granting appropriations for the Departments of Commerce, Justice, Energy, Interior, and the EPA, among others. So, again, it's the timing of this Gordon, is not lost on me. We've been promised the single item appropriations, since McCarthy, right? The Matt Gaetz McCarthy feud in 2023, January 2023. So 3 years ago. It's been 3 years that we've been promised these single item appropriations. Never got them. This is the closest we've come so far. It's still not there, but it's very, very close. And it's not lost on me that this is, as Trump is ushering in the golden age. 5.4% GDP we're predicted to have. The jobs reports are not looking great in terms of numbers, but in terms of quality jobs, they're not government jobs. They're private sector jobs. They're going to American citizens. That's a net positive. There's a lot of other things. The trade deficit being the lowest it's been in 17 years. Like this is a move in the right direction. And I'm excited, man. I'm cautiously optimistic. And like you said, it still does not legitimize our Congress, but it's a move in the right direction.
Yeah. And Pete Hegseth gave a speech last week that kind of got lost in the fray. And I haven't had a chance to really talk about it, but he was talking about shipbuilding, naval shipbuilding, and specifically, but he was in the broader context of military contracts. Now military contracts are going to be given out moving forward. And he was just talking about how it's going to be all about efficiencies, all about being ahead of schedule and under budget. And the people who do that will be the ones who will get additional contracts, and the people who don't do that will not get any more contracts. So he's basically like, the contractors, are going to be competing for our dollars. And if you fail, then we will cut you out and you will no longer be on the short list of bidders. So it's like, that's the kind of stuff that we want to see. We want to see competitive bid environments when tax dollars need to be spent, in the context of the military. That's probably one of the things that we're not going to eliminate from our budget entirely. Now, increasing it by 50% is strange, but let's see what happens.
Amen. Doomers in the chat. There's still no arrest. They just convened a grand jury for a conspiracy case, what appears to be a RICO case in Florida. Relax.
Man, go listen to my show yesterday. And,
there you go.
And I spent an hour and a half running through Scott Bessent lifting the sanctions, which we'll get to in geopolitics, but we're not going to do the rant today, like on this show. But I ran through how basically what they did in the first term is, instead of going after all of the crooks in the banking sector and the oil sector, they went after all the money and the assets, and they seized all the assets. And it looks like the reason Credit Suisse went under in 2022 is because they seized all the assets that they stole from Venezuela.
Yeah.
And now that Bessent has lifted the sanctions, that lawsuit that I've been talking about that Maduro brought in 2018, suddenly the pause button gets hit and it resumes, and they were about to go to discovery. The reason they dismissed it is because the discovery would have violated national security. Without sanctions, there is no national security issue. And now they're going to get the emails, they're going to get the comms, they're going to get the bank wire, all the banking information for the banking industry, the oil industry, and all the corporations, the consultants, the biggest corporations in the world that were involved in this massive RICO case that David Boyce was describing in that 2023 Bloomberg article. On top of everything that's happened since then in the past 8 years, all the arrests that have happened and all the other people who have whatever. And there's a guy, Matthias Krull, who was arrested in Miami in 2018, who was laundering money for both those people, the oil industry and the bankers, and the traditional cartels, the people trafficking drugs and weapons. And he agreed to cooperate completely. And they cut to all the time, they cut his time down from 10 years in prison to 3 years in prison, the greatest reduction apparently by a U.S. federal judge. So we'll see, but it looks like that's going to be kicking off throughout 2026.
This is one of the things, we talked maybe 4 months ago about an arrest out in California of a former senior staffer in Gavin Newsom's administration for money laundering or fraud around COVID-19 and that type of thing. And what people don't understand is you have to get these low-level foot soldiers, so to speak, off the board first turn the screws on them to get them to sacrifice their own skin to give up somebody above them, and then and then so forth and so on, and it moves down the way. I think Alpha on that show called it tickling the wire. Right? You start going after these people, and what do? They start to panic, and they start to get careless with how they act, and this is something that's being observed. This is what's being watched, and so you have a lot. If he would have just come in and been like, okay, all you mofos are getting arrested, stand by and put them in cuffs, and then they go to trial, and the prosecutors are sitting there like, we got nothing. He's guilty. He's CIA. He's guilty. It goes nowhere.
Go for 61 in the chat says tons of disclosure has led to zero arrests. We haven't gotten any disclosure. I'm sorry. I'm not talking about Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, guys. Those people, I don't care about those people. Those people are puppets who literally mean nothing. I'm talking about the bankers. I'm talking about the major U.S. banks that make up the Federal Reserve. I'm talking about the oil companies that control the energy around the world. I'm talking about all of those corporations who had all of their assets apparently seized. The Swiss banks had their assets seized. The Saudis, remember, the Saudis announced they're taking all of their money out of the Swiss financial markets because Credit Suisse was forced to be bought out by UBS. And Saudi had just invested a bunch of money in Credit Suisse and lost all their money. And they said, you know what? If this is how the Swiss government's going to act, then we don't feel safe keeping our money in Swiss banks anymore. Everyone pulled their money out of Swiss banks. That's what I care about. I care about going after the bankers and the oil people, the people who control the resources of the world. I don't give a shit about the political puppets in the Democrat Party or whatever. That's an itch that people want scratched just for catharsis, and those people probably will go to prison. But them going to prison is not going to change a damn thing. They will just be replaced by the next television character. I want the bankers and I want the oil executives that control the world.
The one thing I would add to that is I want the election industrial complex taken down as well. So anybody that's been rigging elections,
but free and fair elections are kind of meaningless if everybody is gaslit to support the wrong people, and then the people who get in, whether they're good or bad, are just all balled off anyway, right?
Agreed.
So you have to go after the people who are buying off the politicians, which is what I'm talking about.
Yep. So speaking of, accountability and all that stuff, House Oversight Committee put this out. Watch Bill Clinton's empty chair deposition after he refused to appear. Chairman James Comer says, quote, "It's a shame the Oversight Committee will now initiate contempt of Congress proceedings against the former president for defying the law, contempt incoming." And then Comer put out, Oversight Committee Republicans and Democrats unanimously approved a subpoena for Clinton as part of the Epstein investigation. After 5 months of good faith negotiations, President Clinton has refused to comply. We are now initiating contempt of court proceedings. And, this is along the same lines of Bannon and Navarro, same exact situation here. It's probably even going to be the same as exerting executive privilege, although I don't think Clinton can exert that at this point because what we're talking about happened outside the scope of the presidency. But I want to see the leg irons. I want to see him arrested as he's boarding a plane like they did to Peter Navarro. I want to see leg irons, perp walk through the airport. I want to see all of that. Now, are we going to get that? Probably not. Probably not. These we do still have feckless people in Congress, and they are worried about the optics of that. Whereas the previous administration didn't give a shit about optics. Like their optics, they rallied their troops behind Bannon and Navarro in leg irons. There's still too many normies out there who understand Clinton might have done some bad things, but generally, broadly, they look at his presidency as a decent presidency. And if you do that to normies and you show Clinton in leg irons, that is it's going to motivate the shit out of us. Our faction, quote unquote faction, will be motivated beyond. We'll be like, yeah, that's what we wanted. But the normies out there, the CNN and Fox News normies, are going to be like, holy shit, this is not good. So I think they're going to follow through with this. I just don't think we're going to see the same treatment in terms of the arrest as Navarro and Bannon. Hopefully, he gets the same treatment in terms of going to jail.
Well, the fact that Donald Trump is going around the world kidnapping foreign leaders who he doesn't like and threatening to install Marco Rubio as the king of Cuba and threatening to invade Greenland to take it away from Europe and basically acting the exact same way the British Empire acted 300 years ago, that should really concern the people in the government who think that they have narrative shielding, that they have plot armor because of their position in the television character hierarchy. Because if world leaders can be nabbed in the middle of the night by the U.S. military for being criminals, allegedly, then nobody's safe. Nobody in the world's safe. And the chaos that has generated worldwide, I think, in panic, I think is very real. It's very palpable. And I assume that you and Zach spoke yesterday about Pam Bondi announcing the investigation into Jerome Powell.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
Okay. So there you go. Like that's what I want to see. I want to see investigations into the Federal Reserve. The Democrat Party is a dead carcass that will never win another election again if we have free and fair elections.
Agreed. And that is a fantastic point about the Maduro thing and not giving a shit about the optics of that, because you're spot on with that there are negative optics for the normies out there who see that and like what justification does he have for doing that? And he's like, I don't care. Kind of reminded me of this scene from yesterday that was going viral. Trump was touring a Ford plant and somebody called him like a pedophile protector or something like that. And he's like, just flicks him off.
Yeah. So anyone who thinks that Trump didn't understand what he was doing there,
he knows.
Truly does not understand Donald Trump. But again, his like superhero power is that he can mind wipe everybody, including his own supporters, whether it's his own supporters or the people or his haters. Everyone gets mind wiped by Trump every day when they wake up, and they forget everything he's done in his life, everything he did yesterday, everything he did last year, everything he did in his first term, and how he orchestrates these sound bites to go viral. Like, he knew when he did that, he knew he was on camera. He knew that was going to go viral. He knew that both his supporters and his haters would push that out to every corner of the internet. And the optics of that is everything. That's the signal right there. The signal that he's very aware of what's being said about him as it relates to the Epstein pedophile cabal. So you have to ask yourself, why is that narrative going the way it's going right now? Well, I think that's also intentional.
Artsy Jones says, I was a little disappointed it wasn't a double barrel. I'm with you. That would have been epic if you would have just turned around, looked him dead in the eyes, and just went.
I don't know. I feel like the single barrel, though, is just that's so much more presidential. Like,
yeah,
it's like he's walking while he does it, and it's like he has something to do. Like, he's busy. So you get the single, like, you just get the one shot headshot, you're out. And yeah, move on with the day.
Yeah, and the guy that did it we found out was suspended. Ford suspended him.
I mean, I would have suspended him too. It's like, dude, like you do that to the president, you make us look like a bunch of jackasses. Yeah,
you're on camera, dude. You're on camera representing Ford.
That's not free. Yeah, there's freedom of speech, which means the government doesn't come after you for your opinions, but there's not freedom of consequence.
Bingo.
Like, if you make stupid choices that even especially in a professional setting like that.
Bingo. Now, if you said the Secret Service went down there and arrested him for saying that
that would be different. Then you would be into an authoritarian, tyrannical, like dystopian hellscape.
Yeah. I'm just like, I don't know why I have this kind of like euphoric feeling right now. You
should. Oh, and I would encourage everyone to go watch the Hugo Chavez episode I did on Monday night. Like, dude,
Monday night. Oh,
Monday night. I went back and went through, like, looked at Hugo Chavez, who he really was. I didn't realize how much of a goofball. The dude was a goofball. He was a total goofball, because I was always told he was evil. I just assumed he was evil. I assumed he was like a CIA shill or whatever. He literally was the Donald Trump of Latin America. Like, literally. There are like clips of him where I'm like, holy shit, that's Trump. He had a weekly television show where he would, like, for like 3 hours just talk and like walk around and talk to people. He would get up and say, I have the #1 rated show on television. It's the longest show on television. It's the most watched show on television. It's the greatest show on television. And this was at the same time that Trump was doing The Apprentice. And I was like, holy shit, this guy is literally the Hispanic Trump.
We on Book of Trump, excuse me. I said book club. Yeah, because I had it in my head. We're doing the stolen election right now, which is all about Venezuela stealing our elections, which is hodgepodge. It's complete malarkey, if you ask me. But
he was
last night,
a dancer, by the way. Chavez, a big dancer. That's where Maduro got it from, and I think Trump may have got it from him too.
Interesting. Well, we're covering last night. We did a recap of a chapter we read earlier, just me and Ashe, and then Colonel Towner was like, I want to rehash some of these chapters, because there's a lot of stuff in here that's really important. And Colonel Towner, she'll read something and it'll be like, so and so and his brother, were accused of this. She'll go in and look at the brother, do the backstory on the brother. Like she's like, she's kind of autistic in that sense. I'm not saying she's autistic, but she's autistic in that sense, where she'll go that down. And like last night, I mean, some of the stuff that she found on the stories that's being put out there as this is proof Venezuela, there's no way. There is no way. And it was absolutely fascinating. So between Book of Trump, Ghost's take on this, your DPH segment on Saturday was brilliant, man. Absolutely. I've been sending that out to so many people. But yeah, seriously, guys, at Badlands, man, the people here are so far ahead of what's going on, and have been since the beginning on this. So yeah.
Two more things on Venezuela, because we're probably not going to talk much about Venezuela. One, Delcy Rodriguez, you know what her career-long, like I should have mentioned this on DPH, but her career-long thing, the thing that she was doing back in the Hugo Chavez days, there's videos of Hugo Chavez with Maduro on one side and Delcy Rodriguez on the other. She was an oil official. So she was the one like running, involved in PDVSA, doing business with all the oil people. She knows where all the skeletons are, all the bodies are buried. And the fact that she wasn't arrested by Maduro means that she wasn't one of the corrupt ones. And now that Besson is lifting the sanctions and she's running the country, it's like this is where you're going to get discovery. And then the discovery is going to lead to, I'm more interested in the consequences than I am necessarily prosecutions, but just these corporations being brought to their knees. And I think when Trump says you're investing $100 billion into Venezuela and they say, no, we're not. And he says, yes, you are. I think this is like a forced damages situation.
You know what else is interesting about Delcy Rodriguez?
Yeah.
They put out the narrative that Maria Hakuna Matata was the person that should take over because Delcy Rodriguez is a CIA front. Her father was killed by the CIA.
Yes. Yeah, her father was like tortured to death and like killed by the CIA. Yeah,
I think in 1976, her and Jorge Rodriguez. His name was Jorge Rodriguez.
Those are the little vignettes that I look for in people, because that means she has an axe to grind. I look for the chips on people's shoulder, and those are the people that I want. Like MBS. MBS is seeking revenge for 9/11 because his family was wrongfully blamed for it, even though some of them were involved. But he's seeking revenge for that. Like when I learned that, I was like, holy shit, that's everything. I'm looking for people who are on a revenge arc in like a justice way, not in like a bloodlust way. But yeah, like righteous justice. The other thing I would say about Venezuela that I learned doing this was that, the narrative we were always told was that Venezuela and Argentina were these thriving economies. And then socialism took over. Maduro came in and put socialism in place, and that's why their economies collapsed. That's not what happened at all. No. They were totally destitute in the 90s, like 80% poverty, 30% severe poverty, meaning those people were starving. And it was because the CIA and these oil companies were plundering, just stealing all the oil wealth. Yeah. And so when Chavez took over, he basically did what Trump's doing now with the tariffs. He was like, that's our money. He didn't even nationalize the oil until towards the end of his life, 2009. The first 10 years he was in office, he just took the money, rerouted it back into Venezuela, created a bank, created other things like a social welfare program, and then used the money to build up a middle class, which is exactly what JFK told the Saudis to do in 1961. He said, take that oil money, invest in your people, and build a middle class like that, which is socialism, right? But those policies are what made Venezuela thriving 20 years ago in the mid 2000s. And the exact same policies were kept in place by Maduro. It was the deep state that crashed the oil price in 2014 that brought the whole thing to a stop. That's what stopped the music. And then they sanctioned Venezuela. That's why. And by the way, they became so prosperous and so rich that Hugo Chavez invested in Argentina and built up their economy too. So it's like that wasn't old school socialism, which is extract the wealth from the people and then redistribute it. It was using the natural resources of the land to build up wealth, and then creating a program to build up a middle class. That's what Trump's going to do with the tariff program.
Yeah, I say this all the time. What we're watching in Venezuela, and what if you look broadly, like you have, like I have, if you look broadly at Venezuela over the last 30, 40 years, and what's unfolded in that country, it is the epitome of what is described in Confessions of an Economic Hitman. It is literally that book. You know, it's going the way that the globalists, the global bankers, the World Economic Forum, you know, the elitists, it's going the way they want. Then all of a sudden somebody bucks back against it and says, no, I'm not going to allow this. That was Chavez. Although you could make the argument that it started perhaps under Caldera, but I think it was Chavez that really, you know, the Bolivarian revolution, that whole thing. And, you know, we hear socialists and we're like, oh no, socialist. Guys, we live in a socialist society here in the United States. Yeah. We're going to cover a hell of a lot more of it. Are we a capitalist society? Sure. You can open a business. Mm-hmm. You can open a business in Venezuela. You can open a small business and run it in Venezuela. But we're watching how that happens. And when a leader pushes back against the outside influence, the intelligence control and whatnot, what they do to destroy you through sanctions and through all sorts of limitations and restrictions. And we watched that happen throughout Venezuela. And when people say, you know, Maduro was heinous and he suppressed his people and they lived in destitution and all that, that's our fault. That's because we were raping and pillaging that country. And then when they said enough is enough, we said, okay, well, we're going to cut you off and we're going to get these guys out of there. And anyways, let's move on real quick. Somebody had mentioned, like, do we refute one of our other fellow colleagues here at Badlands? Do we refute what they're saying about Venezuela and Smartmatic? And we're not saying we're right or we're wrong about any of this. I mean, Gordon's research on Maduro and everything is based on his extensive research into it. His opinion, I should say, is based on his extensive research into it. Mine on Smartmatic is based on my extensive research into elections and all that stuff. And I can tell you that I think I'm correct on the election aspect, and I know Gordon thinks he's correct on what's going on with Maduro right now. So
yeah, and I want to be clear, like Venezuela was full of bad guys, like full of villains. I mean, Maduro spent the past 8 years rounding people up and arresting, like his top officials were being arrested, like, and then he'd plug somebody else in, and then a year or two later he'd arrest that guy because that guy would go and engage in corruption, right? Yep. Hugo Chavez, I learned this too, was overthrown in 2002. All the generals colluding with the Vatican, including with the Catholic Church and oil executives. They arrested Maduro or Hugo Chavez, and they thought he was going to start a civil war. They were expecting him to fight. Instead, there's like a video of him being brought in by the soldiers, and he's like, you know, the people behind this are all cowards and traitors. And the soldiers are like, yeah, you know, like we're like, our job is just to take you in. And he goes, I know. I'm sorry for saying that. Like, you're just doing your job. You're a good soldier. He's like, I could resist this because I'm the constitutional president, but I'm not going to resist. I don't want bloodshed. Steps away, like just steps down for 48 hours. And then the new people come in, and the critics from the regime now say the reason that they got in so fast, they didn't know what they were supposed to do. So they just abolished the entire government. And because they immediately abolished the entire government, the people like took to the street and were like, what the hell? You're just abolishing the entire government. And which, you know, super based. But these people were plugged in by the CIA. Within 48 hours, Hugo Chavez is like brought back and sworn back in. They basically did Assad maneuver defense. They stepped back. They waited for all the people to occupy the presidential palace. Then the army surrounded the presidential palace, tried to arrest them. Most of them fled, escaped the country. And those are now the exiles in opposition, the people who overthrew Maduro, but then were driven out of the country by the loyalists. And then 2 years later, they tried to organize a referendum, 2004, to recall Hugo Chavez. That referendum failed. That referendum was spearheaded by Maria Corina Machado in Sumate, the NGO she ran. And then when that failed, a year later, she's on the front lawn of the White House with George Bush, calling for Congress to take action against Venezuela in the form of like trade regulation and all that. Like CAFTA is what they call it. You remember NAFTA with Mexico and Canada. So the point is, this is one continuous story that has been like an arc going back to the 90s. And it's all about the oil executives and the oil companies wanting their oil back, that they were just extracting billions of dollars of wealth from Venezuela. And Venezuela basically said, nope, we want the control of our own resources. We want our own sovereignty. And the deep state said, no, you can't have it.
Look up, saw somebody asking about overthrowing Chavez. Look up the Carmona Decree is what it was called.
That's what it was.
in 2002. And Machado signed on to that, by the way. She later said, I didn't realize, I thought it was just signing the guest log. I thought it was just signing into the meeting. No, you signed the whole decree. It's here's 91 pages, I think it was. Here's 91 pages. Read through all that and then sign here if you're just to acknowledge that you showed up. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Please. And
I played a clip of Maria Corina Machado in January of 2012, a year before Hugo Chavez died of cancer, confronting Hugo Chavez in the National Assembly as a congresswoman, calling him a thief. She goes, "You're a thief who's looted and plundered the entire world." And he was basically like, "I don't want to offend you." He's like, "You just called me a thief, but you know, like an eagle doesn't hunt
flies.
An eagle doesn't hunt flies." The fact that she would, and like the whole place went crazy, like cheering for him. Nobody cheered for her when she said that.
Yep.
And it's like, if that was a dictatorship, she would have been shot in the head and thrown in the hole. Like that's how the cartel would have handled a situation like that. But she didn't. She was allowed to go out and organize more rallies and protests and all that. So the whole narrative about Venezuela was just total bullshit. And we've been lied to, like literally just lied to by career liars.
Yep. All right. So we became a little bit of a conversational, conversational here. And that's cool because it's an important conversation that needs to be had. But let's get back into the national politics. Before we do that real quick, guys, I want to tell you about a law that just passed. Trump legalized hemp in 2018, but legislation just passed a law that bans almost all CBD hemp products by November. Hemp is not the same thing as marijuana. Hemp is a historic American commodity. George Washington grew it. Some colonies required a percentage of crops to be hemp. A colonist could even pay taxes with hemp. In 1930, before it was banned the first time, hemp was used in 25,000 products or more and generated $1 billion per year. For perspective, that equals 25% of the federal budget. Hemp holds tremendous potential for the America's economy today. And here's what's been happening. A few powerful groups of pharmaceutical and marijuana lobbyists have been pushing for this ban. This legislation makes CBD and hemp products scientifically and financially impossible to make. It affects 325,000 jobs and wipes out thousands of American innovations that range from energy alternatives to durable building materials and even biodegradable plastic alternatives, which reduce microplastics and dependency on Chinese products. This bill will affect a lot of you, America, in ways that you're unaware of. Click the Emerald Med link below to learn about this bill and how to fight the ban. The company Emerald Med, who helps support channels like ours with ads, has been fighting this ban. They fought vaccine mandates during COVID and reached 120 million views in ads fighting the mandates. Now they're fighting this ban and need your help. So click the link below and learn more. And guys, that is actually a very important thing. Like hemp could revolutionize this country, but it would take things like big paper, that's where the Marijuana Tax Stamp Act in 1934 came from, was big paper pushing back against hemp. They couldn't ban just hemp, so they had to go after marijuana and broadly put them in the same category. Oil would be crushed by this because of the plastics that can be created. Energy. There, hemp has it's conductive, so it can actually be used in electronic applications. It's a phenomenal plant. It's God's plan. You can't convince me otherwise. All right, let's jump into this story here from the New York Times. Speaking of accountability, Senator says prosecutors are investigating her after the video about illegal orders. Alyssa Slotkin said in an interview that she found out about an inquiry from the office of Jeanine Pirro, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. Slotkin was the one that organized that seditious conspiracy video. Remember the one that this president is pitting Americans against the military against American citizens and violating the Constitution, all that crap. There's an investigation now into that. It says the investigation by Ms. Pirro's office is the latest escalation in a campaign by Mr. Trump and his allies to exact retribution on those that he views as enemies seeking to undermine his administration or his authority as commander-in-chief. I mean, how does anybody look at that and not think that that is a CIA former, quote-unquote, former CIA agent, a former captain I think he was a captain in the Navy, or was he an admiral? Mark Kelly. I think he was just a captain, which is
I'm not sure.
I think he was a captain, which is still a high rank in the Navy. I think it's an 06 in the Navy. It's different than the Marines. But anyways, yeah. So I don't know how anybody could think that was anything other than an attempt to subvert the president's role as the commander in chief by senators who have zero authority in the chain of command for our U.S. military. Miss Slotkin, a former CIA officer, who served 3 tours in Iraq. Please don't ever say she served 3 tours in Iraq. She was over in Iraq doing shady shit. She didn't serve 3 tours. Anyways.
That is so funny. Wait. They're saying she served 3 tours as a CIA agent?
Yeah.
Not as like an enlisted member of the military.
A former CIA officer, no comma, who served 3 tours in Iraq.
Yeah. Well, like I've long speculated, and Matt Gaetz recently affirmed this in a podcast, that basically the war in the Middle East was just proxies that were trained by the U.S. military fighting proxies that were trained by the CIA.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. She described the investigation as an effort by an authoritarian president to weaponize the federal government and intimidate her into silence. Quote, facts matter little, but the threats matter quite a bit. The threat of legal action, the threat to your family, the threat to your staff, the threat to you. And then this is my favorite quote ever from a CIA agent, like literally saying the quiet part out loud. Quote, I've seen democracies flicker out. Yep. I've seen what life is like when government is rigged. Yup. You can't criticize the guy in charge without getting a knock at the door in the middle of the night. Pot meat kettle. So,
yeah. So again, I'm just want to remind you of the anecdote I just said about Maria Corina Machado and Hugo Chavez and how she was allowed for 20 years to run around organizing riots and protests and was never, like disappeared. Right. But I also remind everyone that in 2018, I think it was like 42. It was at least 42. It could have been more. Former CIA agents, ran for Congress. Remember that? Remember, like in Congress, all of a sudden, and I remember being online and being like, people were pointing it out, but they weren't nearly as outrageous as they should have been. Like this was outrageous that 42 spooks were running for Congress, and now one of them was just elected to become the governor of Virginia, and they are absolutely teeing her up to go to the White House, and that is a CIA soccer mom, Abigail Spanberger, who literally taught at a high school in Northern Virginia that was for Muslim kids, and multiple graduates of her program that she was teaching went on to join ISIS and become like ISIS fighters. So and she was one of their high school teachers, and they called it Jihad High. I think they called it Jihad High, and she was one of the teachers there. It's like, dude, you can't make this shit up. Like, she literally was teaching people who went on to become ISIS agents. They're going to plug her in as the governor of Virginia, or they already did back in 2 weeks ago. Yeah, no. Yeah, no. Her election will be yeah. So they just plugged her in. Yeah. They just plugged her in. So she's governor of Virginia now.
Did the Jihad High students come from Madrasa Middle?
Yeah, right. It's just such a joke, man. Like the story is so obvious now. I love though how all of these weird ideas we've had are suddenly coming. Like it's all makes perfect sense. The story makes perfect sense now.
All right, so we're gonna move on and talk about some developments in the Minnesota story, and it goes well beyond that. I know this is kind of a story that we've been just beaten down, but we got to keep this up. This is such a big story. But before we do that, real quick, I want to talk about 2 sponsors. Are you guys worrying about those upcoming credit card bills after the holidays? If you're a homeowner, there's no better time than now to call American Financing and wipe out that debt, eliminate the stress, and set yourself up for a strong 2026. The Fed dropped rates for the 4th time in December. American Financing can help you access that equity in your home at an interest rate in the low 5s. You heard that right, in the low 5s. That is a much lower rate than the average 20% or more credit card rate. American Financing is saving their customers an average of $800 a month. That's like a $10,000 raise to start the new year. There's no upfront fees and no obligation to see how much you can save, and they are closing some in as fast as 10 days and even delaying 2 mortgage payments. American Financing, Colorado's home for home loans. Call today, 866-889-8121. Again, that's 866-889-8121 or visit americanfinancing.net/badlands. NMLS 182334, NMLSconsumeraccess.org. APR for rates in the fives start at 6.196% for well-qualified buyers. Call 866-889-8121 for details about credit costs and terms, or americanfinancing.net/badlands. All right, we'll save the second ad for a little bit later on, and let's go ahead and jump into the story here from Just the News. House Whip says evidence from whistleblowers could lead to Tim Walz indictment. Quote, should be in cuffs. House Majority Whip Tom Emmer said Minnesota state employees are providing evidence that could lead to the federal prosecution of Governor Tim Walz, offering sworn whistleblower testimony confirming the Democrat governor failed to act after they warned about massive taxpayer fraud involving the state's Somali immigration population. Quote, that, my friend, should be enough for criminal charges. That man should be in handcuffs, Emmer said during an interview with Just the News. While Walz has vehemently denied wrongdoing, 3 GOP Minnesota state legislators told Congress last week that there were whistleblowers in state government willing to come forward to chronicle their efforts to alert the Walz administration to fraud and the subsequent retaliation that they endured. That could be big. If you retaliate against whistleblowers, that is highly frowned upon. Emmer confirmed those whistleblowers are now cooperating with investigators and taking an important step to giving testimony under oath. Jump down here and says State Rep Marion Rarick spoke about the pressure and the opposition that whistleblowers have said they faced, saying a group of about 480 disenchanted current and former State Department of Health Services employees has grown to over 1,000 people across multiple state agencies. Not looking good for Mr. Tim Walz. His resignation, I guess he thought maybe if I resign, this will kind of blow away and die down. No, sir. No, sir. They're staying on this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the main reason you resign in that situation is because you don't like to limit your public exposure. So you're not in situations where you have to stand in front of a microphone and answer questions, which is what you have to do as a public official, right? So, the fact that he turned tail and ran that quickly is indicative that he is guilty as sin.
100. Didn't say it. 99%. Apparently, I get shit for saying 100%. Well, I guess I just said it right there, although it's not in context, so that doesn't count. I don't know. I don't think that counts. So now I'm just going to start saying 99% because, of course,
only a Sith deals in absolutes.
All right. My favorite clip. I will never miss an opportunity to play that clip. All right, let's jump into this story here. DC news now, and we'll get back to the Minnesota Somali fraud because there's a little bit more on that as well. But this is what I had up next for some reason, and I'm kind of questioning my own judgment on this. Trans activist Ruby Corrado sentenced to nearly 3 years in prison for misusing COVID relief funds. Apparently, this trans woman, man, whatever, is a prominent social media influencer, I guess. Corrado is the founder of Casa Ruby, a now defunct nonprofit that provided shelter and services for LGBTQ youth starting in 2012, with Corrado funding the organization herself. Over the next decade, it received millions of dollars in awards, grants, and donations. However, it abruptly shut its doors in 2022 following accusations of financial mismanagement and fraud. Corrado was later arrested and charged, accused of diverting at least $200,000 in COVID relief funds to private offshore bank accounts in El Salvador. In July of 2024, Corrado pled guilty to 1 count of wire fraud and admitted to improperly using the funds, claiming that the funds were used to support LGBTQ services in El Salvador. Nayib Bukele is going to put her in the prison with the MS-13ers. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. Tuesday, a judge sentenced her to 33 months in prison, and she must also pay $956,000 in restitution. Sounds like it's a little more than $200,000 that she was accused of stealing if you're paying back $956,000, but it is what it is. Now, this was the interesting part. Following her sentence, she was ordered to 2 years of supervised release, pending ICE does not move to deport her, which the judge said is likely. So I guess this woman, or trans woman, was an illegal immigrant over here and somehow was able to figure out how to get millions of dollars in grants and government funding for a nonprofit that is catering to trans youth, I guess, and offering shelter. I don't know. This is the interesting part at the very bottom of the article, Gordon, real quick, and then I'll hand it over to you. A former employee had a very kind of dark, shadowy remark to make and says, you do the crime, you've got to do the time. I think they're lenient on her, and it's unfortunate, said Taylor Leanne Chandler, who worked for Casa Ruby in 2018, but quit after going weeks without being paid. Quote, there are so many things she's done. This is just the tip of the iceberg. She shed a really bad light on a community that was so awfully marginalized and already in trouble. I wonder what else she's done besides defrauding everybody. I mean, oh, crap. My dog was behind me. Did you hear that?
I did. Is he okay?
Dude? Yeah, he's cool. I just rolled my chair a little bit and he was behind me. Yeah. So kind of shady right there. I don't know if you have anything you want to.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, this, I'm not saying that this is going to be a RICO case, but this is how, I mean, I want to pull on this thread, and the way you pull on this thread is not sitting back and waiting for the DOJ to do whatever it is they intend to do or not intend to do. The way you pull on this thread is you go and you investigate this and compile as much information as you can and put it out there for people to dissect and build on. And I mean, that's what it should be the standard moving forward. I mean, we should be crowdsourcing research and investigations into our public officials and government at all times. That's how the best way to hold them accountable is public knowledge of corruption. And then that pressures the authorities to act on the information. So, let's get to work.
Amen. Another article here from Just the News. Not just Somalis. Feds charge that Yemeni and Haitian nationals stole millions in SNAP benefits. Haitian and Yemeni immigrants have also been charged with stealing tens of millions of dollars from the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Now, we kind of mentioned these stories earlier. We got a little bit more on this. And again, Just the News putting this back out like this. Granted, there is more information. Always kind of tells me that, hey, we're kind of pivoting a little bit here on the stories that are out there, or we're rehashing old stories because they're going to be relevant here again very shortly. Just the News writes, Haitians Antonio Bonware, a naturalized citizen, and Saul Alisme, a legal permanent resident, were charged with food stamp fraud by the U.S. Attorney for Massachusetts. Alisme's was issued a Social Security card in November 2024, the same month that Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey reported the alleged fraud to the Biden administration. So kudos for going after this. Bonheur had a 150 square foot store that began accepting SNAP in September 2021. Alisme's 500 square foot store began accepting SNAP in May of 2025. Despite the small square footage, they received up to $500,000 a month in SNAP money, quote, outpacing service supermarkets. It says, quote, defendants personally exchanged SNAP benefits for cash and sold liquor in exchange for SNAP benefits. So you can't do that. They also allegedly sold manna packs. Now, this is interesting. They also allegedly sold manna packs, which are produced by the nonprofit Feeding My Starving Children. The vitamin and mineral fortified rice meal and potato packs are specially formulated to help malnourished children living overseas. They were selling them for $8 each, quote, profiting from food intended for humanitarian relief. Now, why is that interesting? Because that is an NGO that somehow their product that is supposed to be designated to go to overseas, areas is instead being sold in the United States by in a fraud ring by foreigners. They're here legally. But how is that getting back here? Is this fraud on the behalf of the NGO as well? Is there some coordination there? And NGOs seem to be all the rage right now in taking them down.
Yeah. Have you, I assume that you've covered like Scott Besant's remarks about following the money.
Yep. I wrote an article about it and we've covered it on this show. Yeah.
Because that was like 5 days ago. Yeah. I mean, so the thing to keep an eye on with that development is OFAC getting involved, the Office of Foreign Asset Control. If you see OFAC get involved, that is indicative that they're now going after they're reaching the transnational level and they're going after foreign assets, bank accounts, like Swiss bank accounts, that kind of stuff. That was the signal like following the timeline in the Maduro thing, when OFAC got involved in 2018, that was the signal that that they were going after the oil cartels. And it wasn't really just about PDVSA. So keep an eye on OFAC and see when they get involved.
Spud Hill says, and yet they want to what did he say? The chat just scrolled. What did he say here? Yet they want to investigate a $600 withdrawal from your bank account.
Yep. Except my understanding is that these our IRS agents have been reassigned, right?
Well, so that's the interesting thing. I was thinking about this, and during the Biden administration, and I mean, this could be a hat tip to devolution. During the Biden administration, we were all freaking out about the 80,000 new IRS agents, right? And that, these people were going to be going after us because this is right around the same time that the $600 threshold had been, the threshold for withdrawals before you notice had been lowered to $600. And everybody was thinking, oh, these IRS agents are going to be weaponized against American citizens. We haven't seen that yet, as far as I know. But we've got a lot, Besson is out there. Scott Besson, Secretary Besson, is saying that the IRS is going to get involved in these investigations. Well, what if those 80,000 IRS agents that they hired, who are tactically trained, so when you go after these illegals that are doing this, that have nothing to lose, they might get, hostile. It's interesting. I'm still not a fan of expanding the bureaucracy ever.
Yeah. And my understanding of the 80,000 narrative is that it wasn't that 80,000 IRS agents were hired. It's that the money that was increased was equivalent of 80,000 new salaries. Isn't that actually what the?
But that's what it was. That's what it was earmarked for, though.
Yeah. It was earmarked, but it wasn't actually that they had gone out and hired these people. It was that money had been earmarked for salaries that would be the equivalent of. I mean, semantics potentially, but it doesn't matter. But again, having now gone very deep down this rabbit hole of how this whole PDVSA thing unfolded, and it was civil lawsuit and criminal investigations running parallel, with the civil lawsuit ultimately being put on pause. It's the SARS that are really the big thing. The suspicious activity reports that the banks that the regulators file. And my understanding is how the thing that really triggers these SARS is change in behavior. So if suddenly money is flowing a certain way, through certain shell companies, subsidiaries, and then all of a sudden it shifts and it starts flowing to a different place, or the payments stop, the cash flow stops, that triggers a SAR. And so the regulator, watching it, keys in on it, writes up the report, and then it gets filed, and then that triggers the investigation. So somebody in the chat asked, well, the USAID is still alive and kicking. And my understanding is, yes, to some extent it is. When these narratives get put out there about going after these people or things being exposed, is that changing the behavior of the money flow? Because stopping the money flow, being oh shit, calling someone saying, hey, stop making the payments, stop the money, freeze the money, don't send any more payments. That's what actually brings attention to, for the past 5 years, they've been sending money to this place. And now all of a sudden that money stopped. That triggers a suspicious activity report, which is then sent to specific offices at the U.S. Treasury and other places. And then that's when they go after the fraud and they build the case. So I wonder if seeding these narratives that are out there and then allowing the operations to continue to then track, all right, how are they, what money is now suddenly stopping? What money is being diverted? Where is it being diverted to? Where is it being diverted from? These are things that these rabbit holes I've been going down, and I've been asking the AIs to run through scenarios, and the scenarios they spit out are just fascinating.
Yeah. The SARS thing is, so everything you just described right there is what I alluded to earlier, that Alpha said, tickling the wire, right?
Yes.
You tickle the wire and they get sloppy. They get desperate. They get scared. They're afraid, and they get sloppy, and they make unorchestrated moves, and that's what happens. So
yeah. And so when John asked, why did Maduro have to be removed? Well, Maduro is being removed is what allows Scott Besson to lift the sanctions. And what the AIs were saying is that once the sanctions are lifted, the money flow is going to look very different now than it did 8 years ago. And that's going to trigger new SARS, which are then going to open up new investigations and then revise or build upon existing criminal investigations.
Let's go. Jumping back into the story and talking about those two brothers before we move on to the Yemeni. Quote, to conceal the nature and source of those funds, the defendants maintained numerous secondary bank accounts through which SNAP proceeds were transferred, withdrawn as cash, and then redeposited to create the appearance of legitimate business activity while obscuring the true source of the funds. We have a term for that. What's that called, Gordon? When you put money in a bank, you withdraw it, and then you put it in another bank in order to make it appear as a legitimate business.
Oh, money laundering?
That's called money laundering.
Yeah.
That's illegal. In Brooklyn, New York, an alleged Yemeni immigrant scheme stole $20 million of SNAP benefits from thousands of low-income individuals and families living in at least 10 different states. The charges allege that they conducted fraudulent SNAP transactions out of Throop Farm Market in Bedford Stuyvesant, allowing SNAP recipients to exchange SNAP benefits for cash or non-SNAP eligible goods, including beer, in exchange for a kickback, the charges allege. It also involved, this is the heinous part, man, using counterfeit and stolen SNAP EBT cards, stealing more than $7 million from SNAP recipients living outside of New York, according to the charges. Now, granted, some of those stolen cards were probably sold. Okay. Again, I've told you guys, and somebody doubted me on this. I've seen this happen. I've seen people walking into, you go to certain parts of town where my shop used to be, and it's not the best part of town. And I go to the Walmart and walking in, who knows, maybe because I'm a white guy. I don't know. But people are like, hey man, I'll give you this EBT card. It's got $150 on it. I'll give it to you for $50. That literally happens. Yeah. And so I wonder if, maybe that's the case, but if some of these SNAP benefits, I mean, these are people that desperately need, assuming that if they're legitimately on SNAP, they desperately need a little bit of help. And to rob them of that is just despicable. I mean, I think welfare in general needs to go away, and we need to wean people off of that. But for the people that are on it, dependent on it right now, that's despicable, man.
Yeah. Kleptocracy is really the key thing here, and shutting down, crushing kleptocracy. And once you wrap your head around how that's done, and I've gone back and looked at Trump's first term and how he was actually doing it and how it was happening, but it wasn't like the big splashy headlines. Like, it was like Credit Suisse having their assets seized, but that wasn't being reported. But now we know it actually happened because they filed for bankruptcy in 2022. It's like that is an actual things that actually happened, where Credit Suisse was laundering money for the cartels, and then they filed for bankruptcy because they had all their stuff taken. But nobody got prosecuted or went to jail because that wasn't the priority at the time.
Right. Liberty Line says, no wonder they were crapping themselves over SNAP. They are freaking out about SNAP because as soon as the federal government gets the authority from the courts, because they need it from the courts, which is utter nonsense, absolute bullshit, that the federal government needs permission from the courts to audit states that receive billions of dollars from taxpayers, and there's zero accountability from the federal government to the states, is absolute nonsense. Well, we're protecting their social security number. Who do you think gave them their social security number? The federal government. It's their property. And I hate the federal government, right? I think it's overbearing and burdensome and way too bloated. 100%. There it is. But we got to do it, man. Like, this has to be done. This is the step one in getting the accountability, getting everything back on track. And I can't wait for that decision to come down. We had this put out here. Open the books. Top 10 state recipients of daycare funds from the ACF. And
Texas.
I can't wait to see it. Texas #1. I was shocked by that.
Dude, I wouldn't surprise me at all if we learned that Texas is like one of the most corrupt places in the country. And it's the Republican Party that's actually running all of the it wouldn't surprise me if we learned the Republican Party of Texas is actually a front for the cartels and is just laundering money to like Mexico, laundering money to God knows where, like trafficking kids, like all that stuff. So
open the books, folks. There you have it. All right. So real quick, I know I went way over. You know what? Let me hand it over to Gordon here. Talk about a sponsor just briefly before we get into that. And let me pull that down. And all right, guys. Did you know, Gordon, that by the time the average person hits 60 years old, that they've already lost and regained several hundred pounds? That is crazy to me. Doctors call that weight cycling, and half of Americans do it. It's when you lose 10 pounds or so, but then you put all of those pounds back on, plus a couple more. It's tough on your body, and it probably leaves you feeling pretty frustrated. Bottom line, most people need help losing weight, and here's a great way. Non-prescription lean was created by doctors. Lean is an oral supplement, not an injection, and the science is really impressive. The studied ingredients also target weight loss in 3 powerful ways. Lean helps maintain healthy blood sugar. It helps control appetite and cravings, and it helps burn fat by converting it to energy, and burning fat helps keep that weight off. If you want to lose meaningful weight at a healthy pace and keep it off, add lean to your diet and exercise lifestyle. Get 20% off when you enter code BADLANDS at takelean.com. Again, that's promo code BADLANDS at takelean.com. All right, let's hand it over to you, Gordon. I do have a couple stories left I want to get to
cool
after you're done with the Supreme Court. But yeah, the floor is yours, bro.
Yeah, we'll be brief. All right, as brief as we can. So let's start with like the big story right now.
I'll be brief.
As brief as we can.
I love you, bro. I love you, bro. But
yeah, okay. We'll be as brief as Hugo Chavez. Let's talk about Iran. So if you want to share my screen,
it's on.
So this is from Zero Hedge. As Trump threatens Iran, most of the U.S. Navy strike group remains in the Caribbean. This is something I said back on November 18th when the USS Abraham Lincoln was moved from the Eastern Mediterranean to the Caribbean, and all the neocons were dancing because they were so excited and giddy about going to war with Venezuela that it was like, yeah, but now you don't have any naval presence to strike Iran if you like want to go do that, which they absolutely do. And so here's Trump being asked about that at the Ford plant yesterday.
Truck business went through the roof.
You said to Iran this morning that help is on the way for protesters. What did you mean by that? What kind of help?
You're going to have to figure that one out. I'm sorry.
So many people have been killed.
Nobody's been able to give me an accurate number. I have heard numbers from everything's a lot. One is a lot. But I've heard numbers much lower, and I've heard numbers much higher. We'll be knowing. We're probably going to find out over the next 24 hours. I think it's a lot. It's too many, whatever it is.
Okay, so according to Mossad, Mossad is reporting that it's over 5,000. Laura Loomer is reporting that it's over 20,000. So yeah, I mean, you can kind of piece it together. What's happening here is that they're teasing up some action, right? So even this guy, this Kamal clown, this is Levent Kamel, who is he is, Middle East Eye, which is MI6 Muslim Brotherhood, Atlantic Council. I mean, this guy is a deep state analyst, right? 118,000 followers on X. And his response to this post from Trump, where Trump says, keep protesting, Iranian patriots, take over your institutions. Help is on the way. Keep going. He says, I don't think help is on the way. And no matter how much Trump threatens, most of the U.S. Navy strike group is still in the Caribbean. The matter of F-15 or F-22 aircraft accompanying the plan to strike Khamenei with B-52s remains unclear. Maybe Israeli F-35s can escort and support them. Even if he did something limited, there doesn't seem to be any capacity ready to defend against the response that would follow. He needs, I think, at least 5 days. Now, how accurate that exact analysis is, because that's pretty specific, I don't know. But I think he's right that there is, we're not in a place to go to war with Iran tomorrow. Things need to be, assets need to be moved around. Right now, we have a strike group in the Pacific doing a patrol that was planned, and then we have one in the Caribbean. But we don't have anything anywhere in the area that would be able to assist. So there is no help that's on the way imminently. Meanwhile, you also have this. You have this is an interesting story from the Times of Israel. Israel said to suggest U.S. wait to strike Iran until heat further turned up on the regime. This is interesting. What? Uh-oh.
What happened?
Oh, something. I clicked on the wrong tab, and all of a sudden the Badlands.
Oh, you're good. You're
playing.
good.
All right. Anyway, so Israel and Arab officials have suggested that Trump administration hold off on striking Iran for now, believing that the Islamic Republic may not be sufficiently weakened in order for an American attack to topple it. And if you scroll down, the really key one is down here. It says, according to NBC, Israeli officials told their American interlocutors that interlocutors that they strongly support regime change and U.S. efforts to bring it about, but are worried that foreign military action may not be enough. They also reportedly suggested that the U.S. act in other ways to destabilize the regime and support the protesters, who could do more to undermine the Islamic Republic until strikes could have a decisive role. Among the actions that NBC says Israel proposed are assisting Iranians get around the communications shutdown, toughening economic sanctions, engaging in cyber attack, or launching targeted strikes against specific senior leaders in Iran that could help spur the regime's demise. They're talking, that last one is assassinations. They're saying the U.S. should go in and assassinate political leaders. That's insane. One of the Arab officials quoted in the report says that there is a, quote, lack of enthusiasm from the neighborhood, referring to the Middle East, for an American attack on Iran at the moment, while the other is worried that any attack or escalation by Israel or the U.S. will unite Iranians. And there are a lot of reports of like massive demonstrations in support of the regime, simply because they don't want Israel or the U.S. coming in and taking over like we have in so many other cases. Iraq being a adjacent country that we've obviously have controlled for 20 years. So on top of that, you then have the Kremlin, West seeking to destroy Iran through color revolution. This is coming from Maria Zakharova, who's always putting out signal when she speaks. Yeah, so she says foreign nations want to turn a peaceful protest into cruel and senseless unrest, adding that Moscow condemns interference in Iran's internal affairs. U.S. President Donald Trump has openly expressed support for the protesters in recent days. The U.S. is locked and loaded to intervene in Iran to support the demonstrations, he said, adding that America will start shooting if the authorities use force against the crowds. And there are videos all over now of the protesters throwing Molotov cocktails at state agencies, like trying to burn down government buildings, attacking and beating unarmed government officials, like unarmed government security officials, military officials. So these people are not peaceful protesters. They're actually violent anarchists, it seems, that are being, they're probably operatives. Trump, I think, is encouraging these people to escalate very quickly, and they're getting really excited in doing that. But the actual support element that is supposed to materialize is not quite materializing, it sounds like, based on what the Israeli media is saying, is that that element hasn't materialized yet. So we have to hold off. We have to stoke the fire a little more before we actually move in, right? Before I get to the next part, I think it's worth going to this clip. This is from, I think 10 years ago. I think this is during Trump's first campaign. If not, it's from right after he entered office.
I mean, we have a president. He doesn't even know who to fight.
Yeah, this is during the Obama.
Is the volume all the way up on that? You got to make sure you put the volume.
Oh, no, it's not. It's not. Okay. This is from the Obama presidency.
He doesn't even know who to fight. How about this? 2 weeks ago, he says, we're sending 50 men and maybe women. I don't know. I'm surprised he's not more specific. Should have been more specific. But we're sending 50 men over to Syria, Iraq. I don't think he even knows where they're going. Now, why does he have to talk? Why does he have to say it? Why does he have to stand up and say we're sending? Those people have a target. These are our finest. These are our greatest soldiers, right? Why do we have to do that? Why does he have to open his mouth? Why can't he send them and be quiet?
Mm-hmm. Opposite.
Now he just announced that they're sending another small group over today or yesterday. They just announced we are sending more. So these guys, small numbers. Frankly, I think the numbers are so small that if you're going to do it, do it. Okay. But the numbers are so small. I don't even think it's a good PR move, frankly. But we're sending men over to fight. Now, the enemy is not stupid. They are not the JV, and they are not contained. Do we agree? They are looking for these men and women. They are looking for them. What the hell does he have to say it for? You know, I used the word unpredictable. We don't have any unpredictability anymore. General MacArthur, he wouldn't talk. General George Patton, first of all, he wouldn't even be. They would have thrown him out his first year because he was a vicious, violent guy who used foul language. But he was one of our great generals, General George Patton. He was brutal.
So that's what Trump would say all the time in 2014, 2015, 2016 is, why are you telegraphing what you're going to do militarily before you do it? Just do it. That's the element of surprise. stop holding a press conference before you invade a country. If you're going to invade the country or do like an operation, do it. We shouldn't be getting involved in the forever wars, but if you're going to do something, just do it and don't advertise it. And then you go back and you think about how many months did he spend advertising the conflict with Venezuela, talking about the clandestine CIA operations he had authorized before they were allegedly happening, right? And now he's doing the same thing to Iran. He's talking about, I think we might go in there and bomb the hell out of Iran. This is the signal to everybody that this is a WrestleMania promotion that is not real at all. He has no intention of following through with it. And you should think about it that way, that he is not going to follow through on it. However, he's putting that rhetoric out there for a reason, because look around the battle space and look at what all the other like Republican senators and stuff are saying. They are frothing at the mouth, excited. Lindsey Graham says he hasn't slept in 5 days because he's so giddy and excited about going to war with Iran, right? And then he said in his little speech the other night, when we bomb Iran, the Saudis are going to join the Abraham Accords. And here I have actually an update on that. Let me pull this up, because as reported today, first of all, we have Vučić, the Serbian president, saying that Mossad and the CIA are interfering in Iran's protests and trying to repeat the 1953 coup. Very based. that is my shared opinion as well. But right here, Gulf states urging U.S. against Iran strikes. Saudi Arabia, Oman, and Qatar are reportedly trying to persuade Trump to abandon regime change plans in Tehran. But this is being explained though, like in the media, like I think this is the ruse. This is how they convince the neocons that it's actually happening. It says, quote, this is from the U.S. ambassador to Saudi Arabia. Quote, they have no love for the Iranian regime in any way, shape, or form, but they also have a great aversion to instability, which is exactly what I said on my show yesterday. Eric Trump just put out a video yesterday where he said that they're building like a giant golf course resort in Riyadh now. They have 3 projects in Saudi Arabia. They're spending billions of dollars, 2 Trump towers, and now this big fancy golf course resort horizontal development. And he's working with them also on revisions to their financial market. Riyadh is now going to open up. They're opening up their stock market to foreign investment. So now you can go in there and invest and plug in your money. Next week, the World Economic Forum is meeting. Trump's going to go there and deliver a keynote address. Everything is lining up for the opposite of what Lindsey Graham is saying to happen. And the last thing Saudi Arabia wants is for another fire to get started in the neighborhood. Meanwhile, we have this story from the New York Times. U.S. moves some personnel from key airbase in Qatar as tensions mount with Iran. Again, it says they're moving personnel out of Qatar to prepare for a military strike against Iran. This is all, I think, like the signal intelligence. This is the false signal intelligence. This is Sun Tzu engaging in deception, because these little vignettes tell the enemy inside the U.S. government, okay, he actually is about to do something, I think, right? They are about to get the green light. Meanwhile, you'll recall back to that Times of Israel article that they're asking for help getting the internet back up, because the internet's been shut down in Iran, right? Who knows who shut it down? Who knows if that's even true? But now Elon Musk, this is from Zero Hedge, offers free Starlink as Iran protesters endure the internet and comms blackout, right? So now Starlink is offering free internet service to everybody in Iran. And it says, and this is as Trump is saying to all Iranian patriots, keep protesting, take over institutions if possible, say the names of the killers and abusers that are abusing you. That was the exact post, right? So now that everyone in Iran is using Starlink as the internet, does that mean that Starlink is able to track everything that's happening in Iran and can, on a granular level, and can identify like people who are maybe organizing all this stuff, and they can figure out, all right, who's actually organizing these rioters who are going and burning buildings down and attacking ambulances? 350 mosques have been burned down, according to the foreign minister. Hospitals have been attacked. Ambulances are getting blown up. This sounds like a color revolution. It sounds like actual Operation Gladio strategy of tension stuff. And now Starlink, if they're all using Starlink as their internet provider, and I'm not talking about like the top level operators, I'm talking about the people who are on the ground who probably aren't aware they're being tracked by the Starlink. They wouldn't be smart enough to figure that out. I kind of think that might be what's happening, is that maybe this is like a honeypot to give all the data they need to Elon to track this. And you'll recall that Elon just posted he was having dinner with Trump and Melania at Mar-a-Lago last week. So their bromance is back on. Their little. Remember, Elon Musk is the guy who said Trump is in the Epstein files, right? He's a pedophile. Right. He's a pedophile. And go back to that video earlier about him flipping the guy off for calling him a pedophile protector. Now Elon Musk is back in the tent, in the war tent, helping him. That's all signal. That's all signal to me. I don't know if you have anything to say. I'll kick it to you.
No, I'm with you on that. I was keep going with this. I don't know if you're going to cover. There's a couple things that happened with Ukraine the last couple of days. So
okay. So I want to pivot away from Iran for a second and just pivot.
Just broadly, what's your general take on that? I saw Rick Grinnell posted the other day that he's been working to get gay and lesbian people out of Iran, kind of under the radar. And he said for the first time ever now they're saying, well, no, we're going to hang out here and see how this pans out. So just broadly
like my opinion is that whatever I think needed to happen in Iran to keep it from becoming like the powder keg that starts World War III, which is what everyone has said for a while it is. I think whatever needed to happen happened in 2020 after we killed Soleimani on January 3rd, 2020. 2018, they arrested a bunch of their central bankers. One of them was the nephew of Arachi, who is the current foreign minister. That's very interesting to me, that his nephew was arrested as the governor of the central bank and accused of corruption. And the central bank was the thing laundering the money that Obama was sending in the cash pallets, the pallets of cash overnight. I think all that's connected. I think that whole narrative is connected. And so now we have Pezeshkian, who's the president, who's far more moderate. He's moving the country away from like the radical zealots. The IRGC and the Ayatollah, that's like the, and the mullahs, those are, that's like a religious element of the government installed by MI6 and the CIA in 1979. That needs to go probably, but and should happen organically. But the fact that we're getting this really goofy narrative of escalation is interesting to me, because like the CIA is being exposed as just like this really nefarious figure right now. They just reported the Nepalese government and others in Asia are reporting that that color revolution that happened in Nepal that deposed their president a few months ago was 100% orchestrated by USAID and the State Department. So that's interesting. Meanwhile, this story right here, U.S. seeks legal excuse to seize dozens more oil tankers, Reuters. President Trump wants to control Venezuela's oil production and trade indefinitely. And basically, it's the administration of U.S. President Donald Trump is pursuing court warrants to seize dozens more tankers suspected of transporting Venezuelan oil without Washington's authorization. Several sources familiar with the matter told Reuters. The move aims to solidify Washington's grip on the South American nation's oil exports following the capture of President Nicolas Maduro and a U.S. Special Forces raid on January 3rd, etc. U.S. military and Coast Guard have already seized 5 vessels in recent weeks in international waters, including the Russian-flagged Marinera northwest of Scotland. This is Pirates of the Caribbean, guys. Trump is appointing himself as the pirate king, and I'm not even kidding. If you understand the history, I wrote my history thesis in college on the history of piracy. It was like a new emerging field, and so I studied this very in depth. Basically, what happens is the privateers, they got letters of marque from the Navy. This is in Britain and France, the Netherlands. After Spain discovers all the silver and gold in the Americas and starts building treasure galleons to bring the treasure back to Europe, all the Navy captains get given these letters of marque, which allows them to raid and plunder these treasure galleons. And if they're caught doing it, they give the letter of marque to the government that catches them. And as long as it's not Spain, they don't get hanged for being a pirate, right? But you have to have the letter of marque. So all the pirates that you're familiar with, all the famous guys, they all started off as Navy captains, militarily trained, who were given letters of marque. And then a bunch of them just defected and said, you know what? I don't need the government. I'm just going to be a pirate now on my own. However, a lot of the really famous ones, Henry Morgan, Captain Morgan, the rum, he was appointed as the governor of Jamaica by the King of Britain. And he used Jamaica as a staging ground to launch proxy wars actually full-scale military invasions of Colombia, modern-day Colombia, Venezuela, Panama. Major battles with the natives there between the pirates and the natives. Crazy battles where the natives brought out 2,000 bulls and trampled all the pirates, and the pirates brought out cannons and blew the natives to hell. But the natives won. Blackbeard, he was deeply in bed with the British government and with the American government. He was very good friends with the North Carolina governor. And that was in 1720. Like, we're talking the early 1700s, when it was the British government in the colonies. So, all these pirates back then were actually British agents. They were all agents of the British government, most of them, the famous ones. And now Trump is the pirate king, talking about seizing boats that travel through the Caribbean that he thinks that he sees value in, and he does not care about international law. The international law people are all saying this is a violation of international law. Well, Putin just told you last week international law doesn't exist. There's no such thing. The power is power. The strong do what the strong want. It's might makes right. Netanyahu set the standard in Gaza with bombing the hell out of Gaza, carpet bombing it all, and then flipping a middle finger to the world and saying, yeah, I don't care about your genocide accusations. This, we do what we want. Trump's now doing the exact same thing in a very goofy, cartoonish way. He says right here he's going to install, Rubio could lead Cuba. Rubio could be, Rubio will be my Captain Henry Morgan that I will appoint as the governor of Cuba, because I'm the pirate king and he's my pirate governor. He's saying he's going to seize Greenland. He's going to invade Greenland and make Greenland part of the U.S. The response from Greenland, I don't know if you saw this, but Greenland came out and held a press conference and said, we choose Denmark. That's the leadership in Greenland, right? And then Trump's response here. So here's that. By the way, do you think this clown on the left, this is the prime minister of Greenland? Do you think maybe you could dress up a little bit for this address? You're literally telling Donald Trump to pound sand, and you look like a homeless guy. You're wearing a hoodie.
He's John Fetterman. Come on, man.
Yeah, it's dude, put on a tie if you're gonna disrespect Trump like this. And then Trump's response to this is big problems for this guy. This guy, big mistake. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. We might have to get involved militarily now. And the response from, let me see if I have it in my take.
Well, while you're looking for that, Chris texted me that they sent Nick Shirley to Greenland to interview a bunch of Greenlanders that want to become part of America. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. I'll probably play that tomorrow on Daily. I don't think we'll have time today.
I made this AI. There's Trump the Pirate King. And then here's the this is an interesting little clip from one of these articles that I was looking at. It says the two countries aren't alone in seeking to contain the Trump administration's ambitions, Denmark and Greenland. A group of European countries led by the UK and Germany is discussing plans for a military presence in Greenland to show Trump that the continent is serious about Arctic security. After a meeting with Rubio Monday night, German Foreign Minister Johann Wadelfuhl said he is optimistic that Europe can reach a compromise with the US over Greenland. Quote, security in the North Atlantic and the Arctic can only be achieved multilaterally and jointly, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius said on Tuesday, quote, open questions will be cleared up amicably together according to international law and with joint responsibility for security in the Northern Atlantic. Well, the big problem here with Germany is that we just got a bunch of signal yesterday that that the German economy is collapsing right now. They don't have any money, literally don't have any money. And so because of that, Germany's not doing shit because they can barely afford to keep themselves afloat, let alone fight Russia, let alone go into Greenland. I think this whole thing is just a bargaining chip. When Trump said originally he wanted to make Greenland part of America and bring all those 60,000 Greenlanders into it like American citizens, I didn't like that idea because I don't think that Greenlanders are Americans. They're Europeans. We don't want more European voters in America imposing their will on the American system. However, Greenland presents strategic value as like a geographic outpost. It also is full of rare earth minerals. So if the net effect of this whole little deployment is that we get permanent presence on the island of Greenland, as well as full access to all of their natural resources, right? And then Denmark gets to keep the citizenry under their control, and they're responsible for like managing all that. That seems like a win for us because we don't have to deal with the 60,000 Greenlanders who are probably all socialists, and we still get Greenland as like all the upside. I think that's actually what's happening here. This is all just like a head fake to start a negotiation. And now the negotiating chip is, well, what's to stop me from invading Greenland? I have a stronger military than you, and you can't do shit about it. So I'm stronger than you. You think you're going to stop me? Prove it. At the same time, while he's doing that, he is literally breaking the rules-based international order and delegitimizing the UN, delegitimizing international law, delegitimizing the unipolar hegemony that the West has held over the rest of the world in the most despicable way over the past century. And we have to disabuse our minds of this idea that being the strongest military in the world and dominating everybody through power projection is actually tyranny. And everything that 1776 was supposed to be against, we should push for a multipolar world where we have strong partners that manage their own affairs in their own neighborhoods, so we don't have to be there.
Hold on one second. Sorry. I want to go watch Black Sails now.
Yeah.
Did you ever watch that show?
That show is actually accurate. Those are all real people.
All
the people in that show are real pirates, and
yeah. And it's fascinating because as you're talking about, Blackbeard and the British relationships, and then the governor of North Carolina, whose daughter was, you can see how it's nuanced, right? It's not like they're sailing on the ship like, yeah, I'm a pirate, but I'm also a British, officer. No, it's like he's a former British officer, turned spy, essentially.
Yeah. Pirate ships were the most democratic bodies in the world, like pure democracies. Oh, yeah. They all of them they had their own constitution. They held votes on everything, including who the captain was. If the captain couldn't deliver, they would hold a vote and they would depose him and like appoint a new captain. So you had to be charismatic, but you also had to be competent. And everything was contractual. There were contracts on everything. They were very, very like litigious in how they operated and ran their affairs. And Blackbeard is a good example of a psychological warfare, because he would always leave one person alive when he would attack ships. And then he would tell the person to go spread rumors about him. He would tie cannon fuses into his beard and light him on fire when he would go into battle to scare the shit out of it, and put like eye black on and present himself as like a demon. And then he would put out the narrative that he was a demon. So when people would see a ship coming, they would just surrender and not fight. So it's like psychological warfare, like all this stuff that we're dealing with now. The pirates were doing all that, and they were all naval officers from the British Navy.
And of course, they had to make Captain Flint gay. But other than
did they do that? I don't think I finished the series, but they ended up making him gay. Of course,
they made him secretly gay.
Of course, they did. Yeah.
But he also slayed, so he was like bi, I guess. So
of course,
got women as well. All right, guys, we are going to. By the way, Gordon's got breaking history coming up right after this show, so we're going to end this show a little bit early. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, well, Matt just texted me he's got some family issues he's dealing with, so he can't join me today. So I'm just going to be solo. So so I'll just stay on until noon, and then I'll jump off and just start the show, and we'll just do a live dig, like news dig. So.
All right. Well, real quick before we get back into, we got some other things back in the U.S. to talk about here. Before we do that, though, if you or someone you love struggles with blood sugar and A1C, you need to hear this. It's well known that the expensive meds and the popular shots have dangerous side effects. Well, Creator's Bounty has developed the perfect alternative, an herbal supplement called Elohetrium. Elohetrium is a 100% natural formula that is proven to dramatically lower your blood sugar and A1C. It uses 7 healthy ingredients, no stimulants, no junk. These 7 ingredients would cost you over $150, not $150,000, $150 if you bought them all separately. But here's the best part. There's no bad side effects, only good ones. We're talking sugar cravings gone, inflammation reduced, and stable energy all day with 0 crashes. Seriously, most people are getting better results than they did on the harsh meds, but without the risk. Elohetrium is made in the USA at an FDA-registered facility, fully tested, and backed by a no-questions-asked 90-day money-back guarantee. The friendly folks at Creator's Bounty offer fast and free shipping 5 days a week from Oklahoma. Head on over to creatorsbounty.com/rumble and take advantage of this special offer today. All right. Let's do a quick reset. If you have not done so, please smash that thumbs up. And let's jump into a story here. We had the hold on. Why is that doing that? Yeah, keep smashing that thumbs up. I don't know why Twitter is doing this. There we go. Let's jump back into this case here. We talked about this yesterday. There we go. The Supreme Court heard. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just got a thing that says it lost audio with my screen share.
It's been doing that to me for weeks now. And you basically just have to unshare. It's just your screen that's lost audio. So if you try to play a video, it won't play. So you have to unshare your screen and then reshare it.
Okay. So we talked yesterday. We kind of set up the case that was heard yesterday at the Supreme Court of 2 laws in Idaho and West Virginia that are being challenged about students trans students being allowed to play in the other gender sport. And of course, it's trans women playing in trans girls playing in girls sports, women's sports, which, by the way, the fact they're designated women's sports should tell you all you need to know. But the laws were ultimately put on hold by the appellate courts. I think Idaho started the district court, put on hold, upheld at the appellate court, and now before SCOTUS. In West Virginia, it passed the district. It was upheld, meaning it was allowed to go through at the district court. It was suspended at the appellate court, and now it's at the Court of Appeals, or excuse me, the Supreme Court. This was Justice Alito making the most logical argument you could ever imagine with in terms of this issue.
Not necessary for there to be, for equal protection purposes, if that is challenged under the Equal Protection Clause, an understanding of what it means to be a boy or a girl or a man or a woman.
Yes, Your Honor.
And what is that definition for equal protection purposes? What does it mean to be a boy or a girl or a man or a woman?
Sorry, I misunderstood your question. I think that the underlying enactment, whatever it was, the policy, the law, we'd have to have an understanding of how the state or the government was just understanding that term to figure out whether or not someone was excluded. We do not have a definition for the court, and we don't take issue with we're not disputing the definition here. What we're saying is that the way it applies in practice is to exclude birth sex males categorically from women's teams, and that there's a subset of those birth sex males where it doesn't make sense to do so according to the state's own interest.
Well, how can a court determine whether there's discrimination on the basis of sex without knowing what sex means for equal protection purposes?
I think here we just know that we basically know that that they've identified pursuant to their own.
Okay, so that's where it ends there. But that's the knockout question, as I think Sammy the Squirrel put it in the chat right there. Here's the thing. So Alito's saying, well, they have broad authority to define, men versus women, like what the terms are for that. So what are the definitions? And she says, well, I don't know. Here's the thing, man. You can have an archaeologist, somebody dig up somebody from 1,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, whatever, and examine their skeleton, and they can tell you if it was a man or a woman. So if they can do it, how can our law not do it? Bone density, lung capacity, size of the heart, muscle density. Like, how is this a difficult thing to define? And we're not even talking about the genitalia. This is so absurd. But kudos to Alito for pushing on that.
Well, it's retarded, and we've allowed ourselves to be conditioned. In 2015, I said this to all my friends. I sent an email. We have an email listserv, and I was just like, "This is so stupid. Like, this is such an easy thing to defeat. You just sympathize with the fact that they're mentally ill, but you call it what it is. They're mentally ill people. Okay, and unfortunately, that's just a fact of life. Is that some people are mentally ill. Way more people are mentally ill now because of the propaganda that we live under. I don't know. Do you watch the show Landman?
Yeah, I actually started season 2 last night. We watched the first 2 episodes.
Well, I don't want to do a spoiler. This isn't a spoiler because of the main plot. This has nothing to do with the main plot. But on Sunday, they had unlike the show, the daughter went to college or something, and her roommate was like,
I gotta
well, it's not a spoiler, but anyway, we won't watch the scene. But basically, this girl who's presented as kind of like this ditzy, cute, cheerleader type, just destroys the argument in this brilliant moment of kind of tacit ignorance, and she destroys the argument by basically the girl's like, "What are your pronouns?" And she's like, "Well, I'm just a she." And then the girl says, "Well, I'm a they. I want you to call me a they." She's like, "Well, that's kind of strange because it's plural and you're singular or whatever." And then the girl and then she says, I don't really care what you call me because if you're referring to me in the third person, that means I'm probably not around. So I don't really care what you say. And I was just like, dude, so simple to the point, and it's presented by the ditzy daughter character who's not presented as like a great intellectual, right? But she just destroys the whole thing with like this simple, almost like childlike ignorance of the world. And it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And that is how easy it is to defeat this. If everyone just adopts that mentality that, hey, we can feel sorry for people who are suffering with mental illness, but we don't need to participate in their delusion and like perpetuate it. And if everyone just has that first principles mentality and radiates that out, this stuff goes away overnight.
Yeah, but here's the problem: is you still have these kids. These are kids, by the way, that we're talking about in this situation, middle school and high school kids that still want the sports. And it's like, I will set this as the
Wait, are you talking about women and men competing together in a
yeah. That's what this SCOTUS court case is about. Is
retarded.
Boys competing in girls sports, and they make the argument, Ketanji Brown Jackson. Well, we'll get into that, but let's get back into the clips here.
Yeah. School that has a boys, let's say, track team and a girls track team. The school has that, and a student who has the genes and the reproductive system of a male and had those at birth and has never taken puberty blockers, never taken female hormones, never had any gender altering or affirming surgery, says, nevertheless, I am a woman. That's who I am. Can the school say, no, you cannot participate on the girls' team?
So you're just a birth sex male who has all the advantages of birth sex male hormones, and can the school bar him from the women's team? Yes, they can.
But that person, is that person not a woman in your understanding? If the person says, I sincerely believe I am a woman, I am in fact a woman.
I think
is that person not a woman?
I would respect their self-identity in addressing the person, but in terms of the statute, I think the question is, does that person have a sex-based biological advantage that's going to make it unfair for that person to be part of the women's team? And that's the rationale for the regulation, and so that's the way we would be testing that hypothetical.
Well, the reason I'm asking has to do with discrimination on the basis of transgender status. So what you seem to be saying is, yes, it is permissible for the school to discriminate on the basis of transgender status, because if this person is a trans woman, a trans girl, and is barred from the team, from the girls' team, then that person is being subjected to differential treatment based on transgender status, right?
Well, that would be, then the question would be whether it was, the scrutiny would be satisfied. So from our perspective, that would be a transgender classification.
Okay, so again,
brilliant argument from Alito. That was a great question.
Well, I mean, it's not supposed to be an argument. It's supposed to be an inquiry.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know what I mean. It's like, it's a great point.
He's making an argument through questioning. Now, there's a couple things. Go ahead.
And that attorney who was speaking was the attorney representing the tranny who wants to compete in, like, with the guy who wants to play with the girls. Is that
correct?
What I'm? Okay, she just argued against herself and destroyed her own case.
Correct. That's what they've been arguing the whole time. Right. They've been arguing that, yes, the schools or the states do have the authority to discriminate based on this stuff. And it's like, okay, then what are we even here arguing? Well, it's not defined. You have to have an advantage. How do you define these things? Well, there's a couple problems I have.
Have something swinging between your legs or not. It's really that simple. Like, I don't understand why we are like dancing around this. This is like, we have allowed this to become a circus because we just won't deal with it in a really aggressive, direct manner, which is just, do you have something swinging between your legs or not? And if you don't, then you're a woman. And if you do, you're a man.
Cut it out.
Okay, but you know what I mean when I say that. Like, I'm not talking, I'm saying, were you born a man or were you born a woman? I mean, this is so stupid that, like, they're even right now getting me to, like, engage in the argument, because I won't. It's like, I won't engage. I won't indulge the stupidity of it. It's like, this is so retarded, and it's a communist struggle session, and we just have to stand up and say, I will not participate. Goodbye. You're not doing whatever it is you think you're doing. You're done.
Yeah, the problem with where it's at the court right now is that, historically we've been told that gender is fluid. Sex is scientific, gender is fluid, right? Sex is you're a male, a female. Of course, there's a couple nuance like hermaphrodites and things like that are kind of questionable. I get that. But you're talking hermaphrodites, you're talking a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percentage of people. This is not the trans movement, right? So we've always been told gender, oh yeah, you could be whatever gender you want. There's 1,000 different genders, but sex is male, female, right? The problem is in these cases, and this started with the Tennessee case, which the Supreme Court upheld, but they used sex instead of gender to say, you're defining, trans can define their own sexuality, their own sex, right? And that's a problem because now we've taken the science out of this and we've put emotions into it. We put feelings into it. And they doubled down on that in this hearing. They refer to sex instead of gender when they're talking about, the state can determine, whether or not you can be trans women and that's your sex. And therefore you can compete with women. That's the problem, is we're now putting sex into this category instead of using gender, which they want us to accept that it's fluid. I still don't buy that shit. I think it's retarded. I'm with you on that 100%. But here's the next. We'll move on from that because I got 2 more clips to play and then we'll wrap up the show. I had more stuff, but I always plan a full show with Gordon in case something happens, but rarely get to it because, obviously Gordon has his segment, but just in case like he gets cut off or something, I have the whole show. So we'll save those stories for tomorrow with Alpha if he shows up. Here's Amy Comey Barrett. She's getting a lot of shit for this. And this is nothing more than just her, kind of folding into the leftist ideology by using their terminology.
You're just drawing the line based on biological sex and saying that trans girls can't be on the girls' team in an age group that's prepubescent.
The record in this case does not support the notion that males lack an athletic advantage at 6 years old. That's about as early as the science goes from what's in the record. And even at that age, males have about a 5% athletic advantage over girls in most situations.
There was another clip where she says cisgender. I forgot that was a clip of substance right there. There is absolutely a difference in athletic capability, physiology, even at 5-6 years old for children. And even then, we're not talking about that. Where a lot of these cases, the West Virginia case, I think, is secondary school all the way through college. Idaho, or I might be the backwards. One of them is secondary school all the way through college. The other one was all public schools and college. And elementary school, you can make the argument. They always say women hit puberty sooner than boys, and that's why it's a certain age girls can be taller than boys and all that. It doesn't matter. I never in my entire life, and I was not a big kid growing up. I was tall, but I wasn't like I'm still not big. Never once could a woman in any level compete with athleticism of the not all women. I mean, there's always going to be the anomaly, but there is a physiological difference even at that age where the level of competition is not the same. So
that's not even something I feel like it needs to be said. It's just like one of
I
those
know.
I get it. But it's interesting. 10 years ago when the Caitlyn Jenner thing happened, I was working for this guy, brilliant guy, design builder. We were building houses, and he would like renovate a house to build a house, hand draft everything, and he would build a whole house and they have one drawing, like the floor plan, the reflected ceiling plan. It was like a work of art. People would hang it in their house when we were done. Brilliant guy. But he said to me, obviously he was my parents' age, and he said, the thing that really, the thing here is when they started using the word gender. He said, because my entire life used the word sex just to describe like whether you're a boy or a girl. It was always the word sex. And then when at some point in my adult life, they started using the word gender. And I always said, that's going to be the thing that destroys society, is calling it gender instead of sex, because clearly now they're saying those are two different things, right? I guess that's what they're saying. This is so stupid, man. And this is like, we have gone to the loony bin and allowed the inmates to dictate to us how society should run. And we just have to call it what it is. And we have to be firm, and we have to be tough, and we have to be assholes, because if we're not assholes, then our sons are all going to be castrated by these people.
Yep.
It really is that simple, though.
My sister is 14 months younger than me. Okay. So we're very close in age. We're 1 grade apart. We've always been, and she played sports growing up. She played, she did softball, cheerleading, all sorts of gymnastics, all sorts of sports. I played baseball, and soccer, and that was pretty much it. I played baseball. Never once in my entire life, never once And I mean, we're cut from the same cloth, right? We're the same mom, same dad. Never once could she hold a candle to me in terms of athletic ability. It was never even close. And we're only a year apart. I mean, I understand at that age, a year is fairly significant, but it's an absurd argument for people to be making right there. So
yeah.
Last clip, and then I'll get Gordon out of here, and then we'll get into rants. So this is Ketanji Brown Jackson. I want you to listen. This is crazy, the argument that Jackson is making here, and I know she does it through questioning, but listen to this.
And so to the extent that you have an individual who says what is happening in this law is that it is treating someone who is transgender, but who does not have, because of the medical interventions and the things that have been done, who does not have the same threat to physical competition and safety and all of the reasons that the state puts forward, that's actually a different class, says this individual. So you're not treating the class the same, and you're not. How do you respond to that? In other words, the as-applied challenge essentially redefines the class, or one could think of it as that. And so what's wrong with that, number one, and how do you square that with our holdings in Caban, which Lair later described in this way? In other words, Lair suggested that Caban was establishing that as-applied challenges of this nature do exist.
Certainly, take the second question first.
Yes.
Caban says nothing about as-applied. I know that Lair says later this was an as-applied case, but simply reading Caban, it does not say that. It simply applies intermediate.
No, I understand, but those two cases were in juxtaposition with one another, and Lair comes out the way it does, distinguishing Caban on the basis that it's an as-applied challenge, and we in Lair have a facial challenge, and it's basically the same facts. So if you're right, that those two cases can't come out the way they do.
I don't think so, Your Honor. Again, Lair was actually briefed as a standing argument of maybe you might be able to argue that this law is overbroad, but you individually are not in the overbroad part, and therefore you don't get to challenge it. The court didn't use standing language, like express standing language in the opinion, but that is the logic of the opinion.
Mr. Hurst.
That is classic liberal Marxist legal absurdity. Ketanji Brown Jackson is saying, hey, these two cases are in juxtaposition of each other. So how do you balance that? And he's like, wait a second. This case wasn't decided on merits. This case was dismissed on standing. So they can be in juxtaposition in their arguments, but there's no decision on the merits of that case. So they're not in juxtaposition. You're taking a case that has no ruling on the arguments themselves and saying it was dismissed on standing. It's absurd. So you have a case here that has no credibility, no official ruling, and she's comparing the two just on the arguments. Any argument would sound legitimate. It's what the judges and the courts ultimately say about those arguments in contrast with the other opposing arguments. So just the absurdity of Ketanji Brown Jackson there on full display. And somebody said in the chat, did she recuse herself because she doesn't know what a woman is?
That's a good one. Yeah, I mean, listening to mentally ill regime communists argue about this in a very litigious, granular setting, which is what is happening here at the Supreme Court, and having it all recorded for posterity is probably beneficial, so that 100 years from now, people can look back and be like, "Wow, was everybody in 2025 just absolutely retarded?
Yes,
like were they living in idiocracy?" But other than that, I mean, this whole thing is just a laugh out loud Saturday Night Live skit.
All right, Gordon, you got to go, or you want to stick around for the rants real quick?
I probably should go. I probably should go start the other show. But yeah, everyone jump over to Breaking History. We will talk about some of the news stories that I didn't get to yesterday. So yeah, I'll
rate it. Yeah, Breaking History at 12. We've got Daily Herald at 1. DPH tonight with Shipwreck, I think, is on Wednesdays. Yeah, before.
Yes, Shipwreck and Altered States.
Altered State. Right.
Yeah, and General Quast is going to be on the choice at 11. So
Yes.
we're starting the show now at 11. We're going to do a 2.5 hour show instead of an hour and a
Well,
half
and
show.
General Quash show launches tonight, doesn't it?
Yes, and the
That's
General Quash with Chris Paul as his first guest. That's going to be
That's gonna be amazing.
appointment. That's going to be an awesome show. So I'm so excited for General Quash show, and I'm very excited for him to be on The Choice tomorrow with us. So yeah.
So 6 p.m. tonight, right here on Badlands Space Revolution. General Quash will have Chris Paul as the first guest. So tune into that. Gordon, thank you, brother. I will see you. I'll raid over to Breaking History as soon as this is wrapped up.
All right. See y'all later.
All right. Take care. And don't forget, folks, I will also be live streaming Tina Peters' trial, her appeals, oral arguments today at 2:30 p.m. on my channel, rumble.com/CannCon. So I'll see you guys over there. Let's jump into these real quick. Doc from Amish, PA. President Donald J. Trump is the master of narrative mandate development. Yes, he sure is. Thank you for the rant. Lee Walden, Morelia's, did you take down the Matt Gaetz by Dan Bongino? Moral is, did you take down I don't know what that is. CannCon, roll me another one just like the other one. Puff, puff, pass. Amen, brother. Lee Walden, pretty cool. Scene in the HBO movie Adams has Sam Adams on the Boston docks making rope from hemp. The more we learn about, I'm telling you, hemp can be used for so many things, and it is infinitely more. You can the rollover, the turnover rate, I think it's called, of hemp versus trees is crazy. You know, the amount of productivity out of a hectare or whatever it's called, an acre of land, is much better with hemp than it is with trees. And that's one of the reasons why, the DuPont, and I can't remember the guy's name that does the paper in the 1930s, which the paper back then was the equivalent of the internet today, right? The newspapers and everything was the internet. So imagine if you controlled the paper and you controlled the news and the productivity of it. It was a huge, huge, huge business. And so when hemp came in and threatened the timber industry and the lumber and the trees that made the paper, the pulp, it was a big deal. And that's why they passed, one of the big reasons they passed the 1934 marijuana, as they called it back then, Tax Stamp Act. Huck Fillery, in theory, there's been at least 100 times CannCon has repressed the urge. That and the Sith clip deserves a Huck buck. Plus, I need to move out of CannCon's head. It's literally hard to sleep in there. I bet you it is. There's probably a bunch of horrific things going on in my head, given my past. But it's more of a joke at this point, I think. So every time I say it, I'm slowly gonna get to 99% because only Siths deal in absolutes. But thank you, Huck Fillery. It's good to see you. Catalyst Equine 7, great show today. Thanks for all you guys do. Have a great day, everyone. You too. Thank you so much. Lee Walden, Ghost. I just confirmed that the 5th and 7th Fleet in the Middle East, Truman and Carl Vincent. Please accept my apologies, though. I had the wrong date of Navy deployment. All right. Thank you, Lee Walden. Sleep State, interesting take on Greenland situation. Michael Yawn, Substack. I will check that out as well. Thank you guys all so very much for tuning in, and I appreciate it again. Hit the like, hit the thumbs up if you like the show. I'm going to raid you guys over to Ghost here in a second. I am going to put the link for the Tina Peters hearing right there in the chat. Give me a follow over there if you have not done so yet. Stay tuned to Badlands for Breaking History. And again, little power surge there. And again, I'm looking forward to seeing the General Quash show for sure today. That is weird. Just that one light going on and off. I might have to change the bulb here. Breaking History. There it is. And let's get you guys rated over there to Gordon. Lee Walden says, my thumbs suck. Dan Bongino takedown of Matt Gaetz. Worth it. Man, I'm not getting involved in all that stuff. I think there's a lot of kayfabe going on still. And I like Matt Gaetz. I still like Matt Gaetz. And the crazy part is that Bongino's historically liked Matt Gaetz as well. So it doesn't make much sense to me. But here we go, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to raid you guys over there. Thank you all so much for tuning in. God bless. I'll see you guys at 2:30 p.m. Eastern on my channel for the Tina Peters oral arguments. God bless, guys.